What a fucking day Thursday was. This wasn't even meant to be my first video on this channel. I had something made and was editing at the time, but this is this is going to take precedent. This is, given what happened, this video needs to be made. Over the span of 12 hours, it was quite possibly the most chaotic time in Formula 1. That culminated in a cancellation of a Formula 1 Grand Prix, and it really put on show that FIA, Formula 1, and whoever relevant parties there are a bunch of incompetent wankers by the sounds. I'm not intending this to be a rant, but it could end up that way. This is just mainly to document in one video the timeline of what happened on Friday the 13th in Australia. So, here we go. But before I get into this, I am not going to comment about coronavirus or COVID-19 in any greater entirety. I'm only going to bring it up as it is relevant to the story. I'm not going to comment on its severity, if people are making a big deal out of it or not. It is not within my wheelhouse to discuss this kind of thing. It is far out of my purview. So just know that I'm not going to be doing any of that. So do your own research about it. Come to your own conclusions about what you think of the virus. So before I get into the whole debacle, I'm going to talk about something that happened a day or two earlier, in that the Italian teams had just managed to get into Australia before the border had closed for Italian travellers, or at least restricted. This was something that was a big potential issue for the paddock, because Italy had been getting hit hard with the virus and have locked themselves down, so we weren't sure if they would make it before any kind of travel restrictions were put in place. Fortunately-ish, they had managed to get in on time before then. As well as that, there were reports that had surfaced that one McLaren and 4 Haas team members have self-isolated, showing potential symptoms of the virus. In interviews, some drivers had mixed feelings about the weekend, Hamilton being the main one to speak up, saying he was shocked that the GP was happening at all. On top of that, there was a lot of the teams were on edge about interacting with the public. Certain open TV sessions were being avoided. Their hospitality was only open to team members or invited guests. So people were so even though the race was meant to go on and nothing was being cancelled at this time, there was still some people not wanting to run too many risks. And then in the evening, the catalyst that set everything into motion occurred. The test results came back and the Haas team members returned negative. McLaren's, however, did not. At 10:22 in the evening, Australian time, they posted a statement that they were withdrawing from the Grand Prix. And this is when the madness started to ensue. About an hour later, the F1 official Twitter account posted that they are going to coordinate with relevant authorities on the next step in light of this news. And then went dead silent. At midnight, the Australian Grand Prix circuit gave a statement saying that they were now being advised by the Victorian Chief Health Officer, which suggested most were feeling going into the weekend that F1 and the circuit had no real plans in place for something like this to happen, and kind of were going in blind and just taking a gamble and hoping it would pay off, and it didn't. At 12:20, team principals had a meeting to discuss the situation. At around about this time, IndyCar had cancelled the Firestone GP in St. Petersburg, which then piled pressure on the FIA to act more. At 1:30 in the morning, it is then reported that the TV broadcasters were told not to go to the circuit in the following day. Then not long after, there was a report that team principal Christian Horner is ready to win the race. Now, unless this statement was made before this whole thing had happened or it came out, this really is in poor taste. And knowing Red Bull, they're about as kind as a heart attack, so I wouldn't put it past Horner and co. to have a statement like this so early, around about that time. Then, at 2 a.m, Sky Sports reported that the race was going ahead. The news that set everyone alight. Then, around about half an hour later, Andrew Benson from the BBC said that sources from F1 told him that the race had been called off. Absolute bedlam is now starting to issue because no one knows who is telling the truth at this point. You have completely contradicting sources from F1 saying that this race is either on or off. And whilst all this is happening, F1, FIA, circuit management is absolute dead silent. We had more questions than answers at this point. It was unbelievable. It was then reported at 3 AM that the Grand Prix was off and a statement was expected within the hour. The hour passed and still absolutely nothing. A political meeting was held at 7 AM, which implied that there would be an official cancellation statement not too long. At 6:30, there were text messages posted from track marshals that activities are to resume as planned, and as well as that the F1 two-seaters were also running around the track. So everyone just assumed that the weekend was going to run as normal, and first practice was going to happen in a few hours' time. The FI didn't even give instructions to media personnel if they should actually attend the circuit. At almost 8 AM, an AlphaTauri mechanic posted a statement on Twitter saying that there should be a statement in about 30 minutes, and his colleagues were advised to bring close to the track to dismantle the pits. He then, not long after this, deleted the tweet and his account after. At 8:30 in the morning, sources then came out to say that teams had voted overnight on whether the race should carry on or not, with the vote being split 50-50. Come on, guys. So after 10 hours of the announcement of McLaren's withdrawal, we've had are conflicting statements of the race happening or not, political meetings that are meant to provide a statement after that, track marshals being told business as usual, crew members potentially tearing down the pits, and a vote from all the teams that went half and half over the race starting. Still nothing from all the relevant parties with an official statement. Absolute bedlam at this point. This is it's crazy just how in 10 hours we have ended up with nothing at that point. And you want to know what rubs salt into the wound at the most? Jean Todt was away meeting with business people rather than dealing with this situation. He just didn't do anything. He just didn't give a shit by the sounds of things. Unfucking believable. So by about 8:30, Chase Carey, the head of Liberty, arrived at the circuit after being in Vietnam, meeting with track owners, Ross Brawn and a few others to come to an agreement as to how to move forward and cancel the Grand Prix itself. Not long after that, reports came in that Kimi Räikkönen, Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen have all flown home from Europe before any word of a cancellation had come through, with the latter saying, aka Max Verstappen, that they aren't even planning to turn up to Bahrain because of FIA's response to this whole ordeal. By this point, queues were starting to form outside the gates, and they were being told by people outside, well, maybe not official organisers, but certain members that are there, that the gate openings being delayed while they work out event programming. Things were really not looking good at all. Then at 9 AM, the circuit announces the race is going ahead without spectators. And then not long after that, we find out the teams that voted for and against the race going ahead. Voting against the race going ahead was Ferrari, Renault, Alfa Romeo, and Haas. The other 5 initially were Mercedes, Racing Point, and Williams, Red Bull, and AlphaTauri. However, the former 3, the Mercedes and powered teams, initially voted ahead to have the race go, but then Daimler stepped in and told them to pull out, leaving only Red Bull and AlphaTauri backing the vote. Mercedes then released a statement after that, requesting the cancellation of the Grand Prix, and finally at 10 AM, the Formula One Twitter account finally announced that the Australian Grand Prix has been cancelled. 12 whole hours almost of shambles back and forth. more questions and answers, finally culminating with the answer that everyone up and down the grid was looking for. So there you have it, a night of just confusion and bedlam, all laid out in front of you in as succinct a way as I am capable of doing it. It was weird. It was just crazy just seeing the feed of just so many people or so many sources saying, yeah, this race is going to happen, and then literally separate sources saying, no, it's not happening at all, to then being like, oh, now it's taking place behind closed doors, to, yeah, now it's just been called off. It's like, it's been so disorganized, so, like, it was just so disorganized in its entirety. I can respect what Ross Brawn had said, because he gave a brief interview with Buxton, saying he needs to communicate with teams and all these kind of stuff, but maybe it's just me not being in a position like that, but I feel like this is one of those times where leadership trumps all of this, where we need someone to actually act, rather than just sit and pontificate and discuss. This is a situation that is quite serious. Whether you think the virus is a genuine threat or not, it's not good to have something like that plague a race when we have now, I think, about 14 McLaren crew members being in self-isolation in Australia at this point. And that's the thing as well. You took all of these teams out there and have left them in Australia, potentially exposed to potentially to someone with the virus. What do they do then? Do they just do they hang about for the next 2 weeks and hope they're fine? Do they just go home instantly? Like, how? Like, I get this, it's a rapidly ebbing and flowing situation that, could get better in the coming month, could have gone worse within weeks. We don't know, because they did say that they managed to hold something in Melbourne a week earlier that had 86,000 people there without an issue. So it is an ebb and flowing situation, but it was it was a risky move from the onset to do this. It was a risky idea, and it has absolutely not paid off. And the fact is, the only people to come out of this good are McLaren, because as soon as they caught wind or were informed of what happened, instantly we're withdrawing from the race. We're getting out of here. For the safety of us and everyone, we're out of here. Instantly, without giving it a thought. And everyone else was just doing nothing, was just starstruck, could do nothing about it for nearly 12 hours. Like, how can you be this disorganized and not be prepared for something like this? Again, I get you wanted or needed to discuss it with people, but this isn't just a normal Grand Prix weekend. This isn't the same as Indianapolis 2005, where it was just a tire issue that was causing an issue with the whole weekend and an installation of a chicane. That I can understand there being meetings for and etc. But I feel like when there's a pandemic, coming across the world, I feel like there's a time where leadership needs to put a foot down and go, we're taking action over this and we are calling this thing off. If that was the FIA's intentions, if that was FIA and Formula One intentions from the beginning, it should have been that. A part of me feels like they didn't want to cancel it. And I think that's a general feeling amongst the community, is that the FIA really didn't want this to be called off. They wanted things to carry on as normal, as if nothing ever happened. Or was going to happen, for that matter. So, it's hard for me to think. So, even with that kind of idea of they can just take, they would just take the approach of just, without discussion, making a statement. I'm not even convinced they would make the right choice. I think they saw the writing on the wall. I think they eventually, after 12 hours of discussions, seeing the meltdown that's occurring, and decided, fuck, we need to stop this. We can't carry on. This isn't gonna work. Like, oh man, it was bedlam. Absolute madness. This really did show FIA and other relevant party incompetence on a massive scale. Like, on a at least transparently. Especially not long after the whole technical directive Ferrari, backroom kind of, hush hush stuff. It didn't, these two things happening close to each other has really, really made the FIA look unbelievably bad. More bad than ever before. Oh man, I knew I would rant a bit. I knew it was going to happen. I had a script for like most of this, for at least the details of what happened. Not at this point though. Not for the past couple of minutes. I think I'm going to cut this off here. Yeah, this as a first video for the channel, this is great. I recorded another. I've got one recorded and I'm sort of editing. That will come out soonish. Like, yeah, soonish. As soon as it's ready and all that. Probably a week afterwards. Yeah, FIA, you're alright, mate. FIA incompetent.